Stories are survival of the hungry. My name is Osadumebi, and every week I will tell you a short story written by a Nigerian writer or author. That's the long and short of it. So without much ado, this week's story is by Victoria Osuolale, and it's titled Bigi Bid. Somewhere in Ikorodu, deep in the heart of Lagos, there was traffic. But this is not uncommon. Endless rows of cars lined the roads, only crawling forward a few spaces every 10 minutes or so. Exhaust pipes dripped, horns blared, and headlamps shone angrily. The air, thick with heat and heavy with the smell of exhaust smoke, sat heavily upon metal roofs, as if the atmosphere itself was displeased with the amount of human beings on the road. None was more displeased, however, than one woman smack dab in the middle of the gridlock, glaring at all the vehicles she could see as if nasty looks would somehow make the offending cars vanish. There were many things Morire hated. Traffic was somewhere at the top of the list, somewhere right under shooting nasty looks at things. Both never failed to give her a headache. For the millionth time, she exhaled and stretched her feet further under the driver's seat, careful not to brush his legs. Her seating adjustment did little to alleviate her discomfort. She'd been living in Lagos for 13 years, and she still had not gotten used to the go-slows. Or, as in this case, the complete standstill. She felt headachy and queasy. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against the back of the driver's headrest. She had just about gotten semi-comfortable when a sudden and loud horn blast from the truck beside their minibus caused her to flinch. She wouldn't have thought it possible, but her frustration grew. Her stomach churned while her head pounded a steady staccato. She felt betrayed, as if both organs had connived to launch a coordinated attack. Maybe they had. She glanced wearily at her wristwatch. It was nearly 10:30. She wanted to curl up and cry. She was a horn blast away from executing her plan when hope manifested itself in human form. It said, "Gala, gala, 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 sweet gala here." Her head snapped up instantly. Food might settle her stomach, or at least provide some form of comfort. She was suddenly thankful for the existence of all roadside hawkers. She could hear the hawker's voice gaining intensity as he drew nearer. In no time, he was right beside their minibus. She could see him through the window, dark and sweaty, in a thin white singlet and dirty red underwear peeking over black shorts. He had a carton hoisted on his shoulder, and he was still chanting, "Gala, gala, 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 sweet gala here." "Gala," Morire called, and the hawker stopped and took a couple of steps back to face her. "I want to buy too." The man sitting not 10 inches from her spoke. They had done their best to politely ignore each other's existence, but she was now forced to confront his. Her eyes swept quickly to his face. The hawker had his undivided attention. The hawker shot a brown-toothed smile in her direction. "Sister, now only one remain, oh." The hawker reached for the sausage. "That should be enough, actually," she said, beginning to fumble in her bag for her purse. "And why do you get to have it?" It took her a moment to realize that the question had been directed at her. She pushed the compact mirror she had unearthed back into the depths of her purse and looked at him. She could not make out any of his features in the dark, but she imagined he had a condescending expression plastered on his face. "Because I called him first," she replied curtly, finally pulling free a 50 naira note. She leaned over the man slightly, extending the money to the hawker, who shook his head, smiling. "Ah, auntie, gala don cost o. Na Buhari regime we dey. How much is it?" 100 naira, ma," came the reply. He was robbing her blind, but she was too tired and hungry to care. She reached for her purse again when she heard the most upsetting words in her present reality. "I go buy am for 200. It was the condescending man. She was so startled she almost dropped her purse. She looked between the hawker and the man, like a betrayed lover. "Wait, oh, are you seriously going to try to outbid me for my gala?" "It is not your gala until you have paid for it," the man replied. She could almost hear the smirk in his voice. "Oga seller, abi wetin you think?" he asked the hawker. Morire's gaze settled desperately on him, hoping that whatever his mother taught him about justice and fair play as a child would suddenly resound. There was a small, almost transparent smile on his face, and she could see the gears turning in his head. She knew his response before he'd even finished processing his thoughts, and she concluded that his mother had not done enough to ground his morals. "Auntie, abeg, no vex, oh," he began. 300. "I will give you 300 naira," she cut in. The hawker looked between her and the man, puzzled. She almost felt bad for him. 500 naira, the man said, sounding bored. She wanted to throttle him. 600! She was almost yelling. She could hear the driver laughing in the front seat. A quick glance revealed he was watching their exchange from his rearview mirror. Free traffic entertainment. 1,000 naira. The man pulled out his wallet. She cursed silently. She didn't have that much cash on her. The hawker had the audacity to look at her apologetically as he handed her nemesis his prize. He took the 1,000 naira note he was offered and ran off. Morire's mouth was agape as she watched the exchange. Her annoyance and irritation was sending her heartbeat into a frenzy as she bit her lip and silently contemplated the injustice of the universe. She was angry enough to burst into tears. Instead, she sat back and turned her face to the other window, glaring once more at random vehicles. The rustling sound of the sausage wrapper being opened seared her chest like a hot brand. Then, a small nudge on her elbow. She turned to look at the man. He had split his sausage in the middle and was holding out the other half in the wrapper. Grateful for something else other than cars to be offended by, she scowled at him before turning her face back to her window. Her stomach rumbled angrily in protest. The slight adrenaline rush from her anger had eased her queasiness, leaving only hunger and what was most likely a hunger-induced headache. Somehow, she could feel him smiling. He had such a strong presence. He was the sort that didn't need to speak to be noticed. All he had to do was be. And she hated that he was being here in the minibus with her. She suddenly felt small and stupid, like a sullen child. "All right, you can have the whole thing." He was offering an olive branch. "I don't want anything from you." Annoyingly, her stomach growled on cue. Hunger pangs gnawed at the edges of her stomach. Nearly 8 hours had passed since her last meal. "Well, from the sounds of things," You need something from me. My gala. No, I don't. Yes, she did. Okay, I'm sorry. I needed it more than you did. She heard him take a happy bite, and her anger flared so quickly and dangerously that her eyebrows met. How could he be so gloriously presumptuous and idiotic and selfish? She took a deep breath. I lost my job today. As she exhaled, she felt her anger dissipate, and on her next breath, sympathy prevailed. If she had lost her job, she would probably behave like an insane person too. I'm sorry about that, but why are you telling me? She didn't look at him, but she had stopped glaring at cars. I'm sorry. I guess it's easier to tell strangers things. The apology sounded genuine enough to rouse her curiosity. She turned her head slightly to look at him. He held out the untouched half of the sausage. She took his peace offering and heard him smile. Suddenly desperate to make conversation, she began. Not that it is any of my business, but you seem unusually happy for somebody who just got fired. She took a bite of the sausage and almost wept in joy. That is because I wanted to get fired. She raised a perplexed brow before she remembered they could not see each other, but he seemed to take her silence for confusion. I want to be a photographer. Always have. But Nigeria. He exhaled the last word, as if it was the sole explanation for all his troubles. And it probably was. I get it. I wanted to be a math teacher, but law firms pay better. You're a lawyer? An accountant for a law firm. You? A photographer. She laughed. Are you any good? She asked, polishing off the last of the sausage, which had only succeeded in making her hungrier. Why don't I let you be the judge of that? He pulled out his phone, tapped a few icons, and leaned in closer to show her the screen. His face was partially illuminated by the dim glow, and she decided he wasn't unattractive. It was a black and white photo of a smooth stone. It was barely edited, but the image was beautifully poignant. She felt a little calmer just looking at it. Wow. It fell off her tongue before she realized. Yep. He withdrew his phone and slid it into his pocket. I've always had a knack for taking pictures. It's a good thing you got fired then. She smiled. He laughed. What is your name? Morire. I'm Tony. Nice to meet you. They shook hands as the car crawled forward a few spaces. Victoria Osuolale is a young, dreamy-eyed explorer who believes in the world-changing power of stories. When she is not writing or agonizing about her writing, you may find her reading, napping, or splitting a Coke with her best friends. You can read more of her work on Medium at Akache O and connect with her on Instagram at Victoria the Mighty. Details and links will be in the episode description. If you've got a story you would like to be featured on this podcast, or a published book you want to make into an audiobook, send an email to info@osadumebi.com or send me a message at osadumebi on either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or X. I look forward to collaborating with you. And if you've enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell someone, everyone, that stories are a good escape for a few minutes each week.